Signore e signori,
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. My name is Frederic, Minister for the Economic Affairs. Today I'm here on behalf of the ambassador who had to fly to Paris. We are particularly happy to be welcoming here in Palazzo Farnese. This is the second time we are hosting you. This is your home, and we will be very happy to welcome you again in the next future. I would like to thank Michel Poulain for organizing today's conference, today's event, and all of you for being here and accepting to take part to this event concerning cloud computing. Cloud computing is a part of our professional and daily life. The COVID pandemic has clearly increased the investments in the digital. In this first semester of the French presidency of the European Union Council, we have worked all together to strengthen the digital infrastructure within Europe. France has led the fil rouge of the European Union, and digital sovereignty, which should grant our future freedom. And also the war in Ukraine and Russia is reminding us that this is the direction towards which we should actually work. We are working on European projects concerning cloud computing, and we will also support many Italian-French projects. Today's activity are all based on the agreement signed at the Quirinale last month. This is part of the projects in which Italy and France want to invest together in order to strengthen Europe. I would like to thank OVH Cloud for this event, and I would like to give the floor to Henri Verdier, Ambassador for Digital Affairs, Ministry for Europe and Foreign Affairs. I wish you a fruitful event. It's a pleasure to have you here with us, Mr. Verdier. Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me well. My name is Henri Verdier, Ambassador for Digital Affairs, and I'm very happy to take part to this event today. A few years ago, people would have been very surprised of knowing that there would have been an ambassador that was focusing his job on the digital, and especially a person who was part of the economic and finance minister. But that minister is actually pivotal in the geopolitical scenario, especially when it comes to the different geopolitical sides. What we are requested is knowledge of international law and also a European constitution in order to be a digital power at collective level. The diplomacy is more and more connected, and it's been 6 years now that there is an ambassador which is focused and specialized in these digital affairs. I am talking to you in a crucial moment in history, since the French presidency of the European Union Council is about to end. The Czech Republic will be in charge after us. This presidency took place in a crucial moment, especially if we think about the European focus on digital. We have established and signed some agreements in the last weeks, the Digital Service Act, DSA, which will create a digital framework for enterprises and companies, especially those companies which are very important for access different economic functions that need to be regulated. And it's not just about legislation, it's about a dialogue. There has been a Digital Market Act, DMA, that will allow us to create a fair and free competitive market, and which will give us instruments and tools, or the directive NIS 2 as far as IT security is concerned. These are, let's say, adventures which have been prepared by presidencies before the French ones, and which will continue our task, our job in the future, especially our friends from Czech Republic will have to continue some more agreements concerning artificial intelligence. Europe is moving forward, and I think this is a positive thing. It's a positive thing because there are many elements at stake. The first one, which is maybe obvious, is to free the economic and technological power of Europe, with its history, its economic surface, and also its civilization, should be in the front row, and Europe should accept the digital proposals. And also, we have our vision. We would like to have a cyberspace which is safe for citizens and institutions. When we talk about security, we're talking not only about security, but also some important freedoms. And we do not want that this security is done, and as a consequence of that, having a mass surveillance. We should still respect the rule of law, and we would like these digital service to be at service of everybody. That should also consider human dignity, and I think that this is not everybody's goal, but to reach this goal, what we need is to think about a digital sovereignty. Sovereignty. When I say sovereignty, I don't mean to let citizens, do what they want. Otherwise, it will be an hegemony, and it's not even about protectionism or to avoid international competitions. It's about, a strategic autonomy, and to be able to choose and to implement our own choices. Citizens, European citizens, are very careful about protecting their private life. There is a GDPR which must be approved and which must be implemented. Europeans are trying to defend the right to expression, and overall, European citizens are trying to, they're trying to fight against a homophobic and racist thinking, because they consider it as an act of aggression and not as an act of, freedom of expression, which means that this is something that must be regulated, a European consensus which must be inserted in a text and which must then be implemented. What we are defending is what some define as the third digital route, but I actually call it the first one. And it's basically this neutral internet, which is open, decentralized, and unified. Fragmentation of the internet nowadays is one of our main concerns, and I think that even to this extent, there is something very European that we must be able to protect. We have just remembered that the French presidency of the European Council has take into account this digital sovereignty, and I hope that the vision of this sovereignty is actually shared among us, the 27 member states, and is based on four ambitions, if you can say so. The first one is cybersecurity. If everybody nowadays can, spy or on what you're doing on the internet, you are not. That means you're not free and you're not sovereign. Sometimes we tend to forget that security, IT security, is embedded in this freedom, in this sovereignty, and also our creative skills. Many have thought that we would have been the continent that would have regulated. It would be a mistake, actually, to think about this, or to think something like that. We are digital innovators. We are creators which try to implement new standards or standards which are different from the one which have been established yet. And a continent without startups, without innovators, without people that maybe want to give up to the digital transformation of their enterprises would basically lose its place in the world. And we are convinced that one of the pillars today when it comes to digital sovereignty is you, basically OVH Cloud, and also the creators, those who are able to innovate. And just to remind you, the digital sovereignty relies also on strategy of laws and rules. There are some texts that we consider as very important, the digital text, for example, and the GDPR for the data protection has led the way, and California, Mexico, Japan have been inspired by this text, India as well. And therefore, I'm addressing to the enterprises present here today. It could be an interesting strategy for you if we consider the regulations, the rules, and if these become international rules, that means that you will already have them once you step in. Our vision and the existence of free softwares and the big data such as Wikipedia or others, which are fueled by many contributors, are useful, because the more we have resources which are available and free, open, the more we will be a continent that can, support these resources. We are hosted today by OVH. I am insisting a little bit on the second pillar, which concerns the economic power. The European Union must have the skills to create and the vision that I have mentioned. When it comes to the innovation, I think this is pivotal for building this model. We have some international companies. We have some very interesting startups that are, I think, not very much exploited today. What we need to do is to integrate and to build on these partnerships, and to move towards research and development, and to remain an open continent. When I say open, I mean open to investments, because investments are at the basis of economic freedom. We have many tools. Many have been recently adopted. There is a 2030 digital agenda. We have created the PIEC, or IPCI, which is an important European project. There are tools that can be used to fight against foreign sanctions. There is the Digital Market Act that should be able to establish a fair and free competition. So, this new regulatory framework is at the basis of a new interesting strategy. These potential must be transformed into something concrete, into something practical. We need to be at the center and to be, the leader that we deserve to be. It took us a little longer to understand which are the benefits of these digital revolutions. These are revolutions very different from the ones that we were used to in Europe, but we are a little behind, and I think that now really it's the time to start and launch this digital decade, as the Commission has stated, and I think that today's event will probably provide new ideas and new inputs to reach this goal. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, His Excellency, the Ambassador, for this analysis about the 6 months of the French presidency. Thank you, Mr. Keblon, for your presentation and for having welcomed us in this fantastic place. It's my first time here. My name is Mathé Poller, and I am a journalist at Ratia, and it's an honor for me to be here at this event organized by OVH Cloud, and even if the French presidency semester is about to end soon, we're going to continue our discussion. Whether you're here or online, there is a translation service in Italian, French, and English. You may put on your mask if you wish. And last year, in this period, here in Rome, OVH Cloud had gathered several stakeholders from the private and public sector in order to understand what was happening in the world of digital sovereignty. Something was happening, much was still to be done. So they went to go to Madrid, Berlin, Tallinn, and other places because France had started its presidency semester. As you know, all roads lead to Rome, and we're here, as you may have understood. Today's event marks the end of a cycle, but also the beginning of a new phase, which is devoted to action. And before we start, I suggest we take a look at the key moments of the roadshow I have just mentioned.
All the points about data trust, data sovereignty are resonating everywhere in the world. What we are promoting as Europe values can be exported outside.
We still have the chance to make sure that the digital sovereignty of Europe can be prevailed.
We have a strategy for the future. We have the skills, we have the tools and the people to make it work, and we have the means. Let's make Europe a digital power.
There is no digital sovereignty without innovation. There is no digital sovereignty without technological sovereignty.
I do believe that it's still attainable, the orchestra of different voices, to make it one single one.
It's not autarky, it's not heteronomy. We need competition in Europe, a competitive market where we can choose from the best solutions.
I think that this is a time in history, a place in history where this is more important than it ever was. And there is no denying that we need to be in control of our digital landscape to make sure that everything we are doing is not good only now, but also be good for building the future.
Pero tenemos una tercera vía, que es el modelo europeo. Un modelo al que queremos ahondar, que parte de una premisa clara. Los datos pertenecen a los ciudadanos.
La construcción de una potencia digital europea se basa en la innovación.
Que tenemos que empezar a fijar unas reglas de actuación dentro de lo que es el mundo online, igual que las hemos podido fijar en el mundo offline, para no solo mantener la soberanía de nuestros estados como tales, sino sobre todo para proteger a nuestros ciudadanos.
Para mí, para concluir, tres elementos sobre cómo hay que seguir en este entorno, bueno, desde el momento en el que nos encontramos. Building blocks que nos ayuden a construir todo este marco regulatorio y la puesta en marcha de servicios que sean compatibles o compliance con estas normativas. El segundo, desarrollo de un ecosistema tecnológico que permita crear empresas competitivas e incentivar dentro de las empresas, usuarias y la población el uso de servicios que cumplan los principios y las regulaciones europeas.
Y que pueda realmente utilizarse esos datos de una manera segura, reversible, competitiva, confiable, y donde los datos realmente son ese activo que nos va a hacer progresar como sociedad, ¿no?
The goal we should all have, before we get into the nuances, is ultimately that both market access and the question of who we're able to trust and rely upon is a global affair of like-minded countries.
In order to stay sovereign, in order to be able to run your own system, to have a strong guarantees on the security, we must do many things. And having physical infrastructure, your own networks, etc.
I think recruitment, but also education in IT will be a key element of European sovereignty long term.
Digital revolution is hard, and a lot of stakeholders, a lot of companies have not yet made the turn of figuring out that their data is their major asset.
I think we need to react. The diagnosis is done. Now we need to go to the action mode.
Le diagnostic est fait, on a besoin de passer maintenant à l'action. Ce n'est pas moi qui le dis, donc je vous invite à le faire sans.
So the diagnosis has been done. We need to turn into action mode. And now we're going back to our agenda. There's a lot to be said, a lot of exchanges which will be carried out on digital sovereignty, and these roundtables will be interspersed with some panelists coming from the institutional world. And now I'll give the floor to Tomas Elvrik-Inves, the former president of the Estonian Republic, who will open the first round table.
Thank you very much. Just as an introduction, I learned to code in 1971. And I've been in policy making, dealing with digitizing Estonia since 1994. So what I will say is based on my experiences for the last almost 30 years. On digital on sovereignty in the digital space, I would say we have too little and too much. Some of the weaknesses are quite clear. With the departure of the UK from the European Union, there is no serious AI development to speak of in Europe. Basically, what it comes down to is the United States and China, with the UK in third place. Clearly, this is an area where, for digital sovereignty, it is absolutely vital that we invest very heavily, but that requires a lot of money. In the United States, a non-governmental position in an organization that needs a leader will pay up to $1 million a year to hire a person who has AI knowledge. That's what we're up against. Secondly, we have the issue of chips. There is movement in this direction. It's very good. We must invest in our own chips to have digital sovereignty. Right now, all of the critical chips that we most need for remaining at the forefront of digital development come from Taiwan. Now, unless we start producing our own chips and the very best chips, we are going to be in serious security trouble if something goes wrong with Taiwan. And if we don't do it by ourselves, we will still be in trouble if we will be dependent upon the highest quality chips from countries not in Europe. Now, I'm going to get a little more, sophisticated. This is on cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, or rather, up till 2000, roughly, all war came down to Newton's second law of physics. Force equals mass times acceleration. Now, when it comes to cybersecurity, there is no longer any mass. There is no acceleration, meaning there is no distance or time, at least on Earth. This means that we are all vulnerable. And since I kind of tend to look at the liberal democratic world, that means that Tallinn, Torino, Toronto, Topeka, Kansas, Tokyo, and Taipei, not to mention Seoul, Canberra, and Wellington, are all equidistant. It's not like the war in Ukraine where we're looking at artillery range. We are all in the same distance. And we know that just only on the part of the Russian, APT 28 and 29, or Fancy Bear and Cozy Bear, have attacked the Bundestag, the German Stiftungen, but they've also attacked the US State Department, Department of Defense, and the US Congress, not to mention the Foreign Ministry of Italy and of the Netherlands and of Denmark. And even because it was politically necessary, they attacked WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, because that's what APTs from Russia do. And unless we start thinking in cybersecurity terms beyond or in the same way that the adversary does not recognize European borders. And this, in order to get out of the problem we have, we need, in fact, to have more cooperation with other liberal democracies. A fourth point, where we are incredibly weak, and this is a cultural, not a legislative or legal issue, which is the issue of private equity versus banks. Why do startups leave Europe to go to London City or to Sand Hill Road in Silicon Valley to get funding? I had the personal experience of inviting a very bright young man who was still in university, who had gotten 200,000 euros for his little idea. And I, as in office, invited him to tea. And then he said, well, that's very nice, Mr. President, but in 2 weeks, I'm moving to the United States. I asked him why. He said, because there's no money, and there's no private equity to support me in Europe, but in the United States, I can get it. And 6 months later, he had $6 million for his startup. And 3 years after that, he sold his company for $100 million. That was an Estonian company, but it wasn't Estonian. It was an American company. And so to understand it differently, we know what would have happened to Steve Jobs if he went into, say, Deutsche Bank and said, I'm trying to build this thing in my garage called a personal computer. They would look at him and they say, go away. You have long hair. You're crazy. We don't want to deal with you because you're not a 50-year-old with lots of personal equity and a mortgage. Unless we deal with the problem of private equity, we will not develop a serious digital environment in Europe. People will go to the UK, or more likely they will go to the United States, to Silicon Valley. Now, on legislation, yes, we already heard about the Digital Market Act and the Digital Services Act. There's some serious problems with those. I mean, the DMA is a 20th century antitrust law with really no input on cybersecurity. In fact, there are areas where the DMA decreases security and increases the surveillance possibilities of hostile actors, because the DMA eliminates the possibility of actually vetting or controlling apps that are sold on app stores. So this is, I mean, this is a 20th century thinking that, oh, we'll have more competition, and we do not, and we ignore the complete change in the security environment in the digital world. And let's look at DSA. Well, it's very nice. I mean, it does have this regulation on social media, but it doesn't do anything. I mean, it's a misnomer. I mean, maybe we should not call it a Digital Services Act, because what is the one area where we can do something in Europe that is distinctly sovereign? It's cross-border digital services in the European Union. Now, Estonia has been at the head of this, and we have pushed it to the point where digital prescriptions work between Estonia and Finland, and now with Estonia and Croatia and Estonia and Portugal. Why does that not work in all areas? Because we are not pushing digital public services the way we should be. Now, just sort of finishing up. Overall security when it comes to security and our way of life and our freedoms, we are facing a standoff between liberal democracies and algorithmic authoritarians. Primarily at this point, Russia and China, with some with countries like Iran coming in as well. The problem is we have not understood this enough. We do our legislation without people, or without input from people, sufficient input from people who understand digital threats. And so we are open to exploitation by authoritarian regimes in the digital world. We have this legislation, we have GDPR, DMA, DSA, we have lots of input from policymakers who unfortunately strike me as being digitally and cyber illiterate. They do not understand cybersecurity threats, or they are not listened to. And my proposal to really take this seriously is that just as in the European Union, all legislation in from the EU must be controlled and vetted for its effect on climate change, it's the last moment to actually implement the same policy on all legislation that affects cybersecurity in the European Union. I mean, even better would be security in general, but we need much more input from people who understand cybersecurity. Otherwise, we will continue to pass legislation that is wonderful when it comes to creating digital sovereignty that we will be giving away at the same time by leaving us open to countries like Russia and China, who are very skilled in violating cybersecurity. Thank you.
Merci infiniment, Monsieur le Président, d'avoir accepté notre invitation, et je crois que le reste de l'UE a beaucoup à apprendre de l'exemple estonien en matière de transformation numérique, et on ne manquera pas d'y revenir dans les conversations.
Thank you so much. I think that we should all learn from the Estonian example. I would like to introduce Benjamin Brake, the head of the Department Digital and Data Policy, Federal Ministry of Digital and Transport. Please let's give him a round of applause.
Merci beaucoup pour l'invitation. Je suis très heureux.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure for me to be here. And our secretary asked me to be here because he couldn't be here. My French is not that fluid, so I will continue in English.
I'm the new head of the Department of Digital and Data Policy within the also kind of new Ministry for Digital and Transport in Berlin. So thank you very much for the invitation. So looking back on what you have done already through the roadshow and through the impressive work, it is very much in line with what we also think in Germany. However, with the new government, there's also a process of stock taking of initiatives of the past. And since you know the government is completely new, since it is a three-party government, also with the Liberal Party, which to a certain which is also the head of our ministry, there is a very, how to say, differentiated view on the issue of digital sovereignty, and I'm very happy that Mr. Ilves actually touched base already on some issues I would also like to mention. So looking back on what has already been done with regard to digital sovereignty, we have very positive developments. You all mentioned the DSA and the DMA, but I would also go back to a bit longer in history, as you can already say. When you look at the big bang of the regulation in IT and data, which was the data protection regulation, back in 2012, that was a history of actually defining and shaping how we would like to see digital policies evolving in Europe and how we would like to shape actually digital economy. But now I think it's time, because this is also the, how to say, the final event of the roadshow, it's also time to do some stock taking, and this should be done against at least two developments. First of all, and Mr. Ilves already mentioned that as well, first of all, against the, how to say, the very challenging and complicated global situation with the terrible war Russia has deployed in Ukraine. That's the first thing. And the second thing, and that is something where I would like to touch base on, which Mr. Ilves just said, we need to think in partnerships. We should define digital sovereignty in partnerships. We should not only focus on Europe, we should think about how to integrate and how to work together with like-minded countries. So those are the, how to say, the two backgrounds against which we should perhaps reframe the debate around digital sovereignty a bit. So when you look, for example, at the United States, there are some promising developments also on the regulation level, because this is something the United States were always very criticized for, and I think that was the right way to do. But when you now look at the debates, they have a debate about a federal law, a federal data protection law at the moment. They also want to learn from us from the DSA. When you look at the data protection regulation, there are some states which actually do copy-paste because they think this is an innovative approach of how to actually regulate digital and digital economy. So what we see in terms of regulation is, and I don't want to exaggerate or I'm not naive, I mean, that is still a long way to go, but we see somehow a bit of gaining a level playing field when it comes to regulation. There are also promising news from the Trade and Tech Council, especially when it comes to the question of data transfers, which is, I think, of utmost importance, especially for small and medium-sized companies that deal with digitization in Europe. And just last week, Germany announced, by the way, to ratify the CETA agreement, which will be a huge step forward. Because when we talk about partnerships in the transatlantic region, it is not only about the partnership with our US friends, it is also about a strong partnership with Canada. But I would like to actually broaden this perspective a bit. It's not only about the transatlantic region. It is, as Mr. Ilves said, it's about like-minded countries. So I'm very happy. You know that Germany has the G7 presidency at the moment. And the summit is actually taking place at the moment in Elmau, which is also sending a very strong signal of like-minded countries. But we had also our digital ministers working track, and we agreed in the presidential election actually on the concept of free flow of data with trust among the G7 partners, and we very much sent a very, very strong signal against any form of digital protectionism. And this should not be the way we are dealing with digital sovereignty, because Europe is really dependent on export, so is Germany, and that is the reason why we should keep Europe open for business, of course, according to the rules I have just mentioned. When you go abroad, even the G7 countries, we have the work in the OECD on governmental access to data, which of course will be a huge issue, also in the transatlantic region, and the work in that working group is also actually going forward. And when I talk about like-minded countries, I don't even think only about the G7. I also think about like-minded countries in the global south, because as Mr. Ilves described, there is a challenge going on, especially in African countries, and that is the reason why Germany will probably broaden its digital dialogues we have with different countries in the world, also to Africa. We are thinking about doing this with Ghana and also with South Africa. So perhaps to wrap it up a bit at the beginning and to give some impulse for the discussion. Europe shall focus on a practical approach on digital policy, as we call it Realpolitik in Germany. We should not be naive on the one side, but we should take a step back and look at the broader picture. Where can we form alliances in this difficult environment I have just mentioned? We should have an eye on regulation developments all around the world, and we should avoid to go down the protectionist path. And more important, or most important, we shall gain digital sovereignty from own strength, not so much from new barriers, but from own strength and strong partnerships. So what does that mean? Perhaps 3 issues. We in Germany, my ministry is not responsible for that, but we will push for that. We shall, for example, change our tender processes we have, especially in the public sales environment, because very often small and medium-sized companies are per se excluded from public tenders because they can't actually, they don't have the turnover which was demanded in the tender, for example. So if we would like to actually foster our own industry, especially when it comes to IT and digital and IT security, then we should also have the right regulatory framework that this industry can actually work in Europe. So the second thing is that we should also remain open with regard to standards and interoperability. So everything we're doing here in Europe should be open standards and interoperable, so that actually we can, on a technical way, achieve what we are still struggling with on a political level, the digital European single market. And two very concrete projects actually from my ministry. We're working on the mobility data space. That is actually a space where private or privately organized companies can come together, share data, buy data, and actually work together on new data-driven business models. That is actually something where we provide a technology-neutral platform, because that is particularly important for small and medium-sized companies who are very active in Germany and who are perhaps world leader in a niche, and they would like to have their IP protected. So that is the reason why we provide a very neutral platform to do actually business. And the second thing, and I would like to almost finish up with that, is we are also working on what we call a Mobilität. That is also another data platform where we provide the data the state is obliged to provide upon open data laws. That is particularly important because the industry is actually asking for data. And they're saying they are happy to share data, but what about the state? Why are you not sharing your data? So this is something where we also have to do our homework. So when looking at the Rome Consensus and the 4 pillars, perhaps to sum up with that, because this is the wrap-up event of the roadshow as far as I've understood. We should also not focus too much on ourselves. We should think about how shall Europe act in an international environment which is becoming more and more challenging. How can we with our values find partners to actually work on digital and to make Europe a strong player within the concert of players in the world. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. J'imagine qu'il y a beaucoup d'éléments que vous avez dit qui ne manqueront pas de faire réagir en tout cas nos speakers dans un instant. Avant ça, il y a un dernier sujet sur lequel on ne pouvait pas faire l'impasse, c'est celui de la souveraineté.
Well, we can continue with the last topic concerning data sovereignty, whether it's about the DMA, DSA, or cloud certificates, or the framework. The data management is a very important element for our industry. We have been talking about this for weeks, every week. Even last week, Italian CNE, which deals with data protection, gathered together with these French and Austrian homologues to check to see whether they could adjust and with other countries such as the US. We are honored to have Marie-Laure Denis, president of the CNIL France, and she would like to talk about the effort that France is taking. Well, thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to be here today and to take part to this conference concerning digital sovereignty. during the French presidency of the European Union Council. I'm sad that I cannot be there with you, but even remotely, I wanted to say something about this issue, which I think is strictly connected with private life and the protection of private life. First of all, because our personal data are at the core of our economy, and also of our society. Their protection, therefore, is an essential value, and the implementation of the GDPR is a fundamental step in protecting these rights. And also because the CNIL, which is a regulatory body concerning the digital world, is very committed in protecting the actions that we do. Usually the actions follows 3 steps, so flows that goes outside the European Union, thanks to the efforts that, together with the government, we're trying to make these actions within the cloud, and then the protection of these data. As for the regulation to protect the data flow outside the European Union, the CNIL steps in post-Schrems 2, which is a decision taken in 2012, where the Privacy Shield, which is an agreement between the EU and the EU, was actually signed, and the court has said that the control that Americans performs on European citizens is actually too much. They were not regulated, and without any possibility of appealing. When it comes to service related to electronic communication, these are actually not in line with the GDPR. The work that has been done by the different authorities as for data protection is concerned, a European judge, the decision of European judges go beyond the access to data, but it's also a question of having access to this data from foreign authorities. The actors of the American cloud don't have many choices. Either their economic model evolves and propose something that is in line with the European Union regulations, or they must change it very soon, actually. At the end of March this year, van der Leyen and Biden have established an agreement concerning the data transfer. This political announcement expressed the commitment, engagement of American authorities in protecting data. We still have to understand how this can be implemented through a decision of the EU, which could consider EU as a country that is actually helpful to this extent, or this agreement on the other side of the Atlantic must proceed through another regulation. The position of the US shows also, thanks to the debates that are currently going on, through the implementation of a federal law, the Data Privacy Protection Act. So it's not just about data transfer, but it's also an issue of world economy and the data transfer towards third countries. We need to be aware that at any moment these data can be transferred, and when these data are transferred, the protection level that the EU offers shouldn't be compromised. Basically, security and data transfer must go hand in, must proceed on the same path. When it comes to digital sovereignty within Europe, there are many actors involved. First of all, government that has created a strategy as far as cloud is concerned. Then a trusted cloud to grant tech security, so cloud security, and this as an instrument that can ease the data transfer outside the EU. This new label must also grant the legal security and also the implementation of extra EU law. In order to be granted this label, there must be a cloud service that must comply with the security levels and also offering a localization within Europe. The government has focused its effort has put the cloud at the center of its efforts. The cloud must be the new way of hosting all digital services of the state, of the government, and also all the services that have changed and evolved from a digital point of view. When it comes to administrations, they must be hosted on one of the two interministerial clouds or on the clouds that have been proposed by the enterprises and companies if they fulfill the security requirements. There are also investments as far as research and development are concerned. The CNIL has implemented concrete actions within the framework of its mission, which is accompanying and also controlling, as stated in our strategical plan 2020-2024. What we're trying is to, support these initiatives to make them viable. Politics have established some actors to work on their cloud of VH, for example, but also Google and the project with Orange and also Microsoft and Thales and the Google Cloud. We think that these projects are promising ones, although we can't really say whether it will be feasible or not. The CNIL has spoken with some authorities and also with some companies to help them. When there was the conference of concerning the collaboration with the Haute École, especially when it comes to the transfer of personal data. CNIL has also worked with the GAP in its project concerning tenders in order to help the buyers to choose the right cloud. The CNIL has also spoken about an appeal that has been done against the American cloud with the within the Data Health Club issue, where Microsoft, CNIL has wanted that data and services were in the hands of bodies and entities that were regulated by EU legislations. CNIL has also acted together with his European homologue, Italian and Austrian, etc. Several bodies and authorities have been asked to comply to these rules to grant a better protection of users, of European users. The data transfer within clouds is one of the three main elements of the strategical plan 2022-2024 of the CNIL. What is at stake is a European digital sovereignty. Building this digital sovereignty depends also on the coordination of those authorities that are responsible for data protection. There is a European Committee for Data Protection that has launched the first control campaign together with the 27 control agencies within public cloud. There is a cloud certificate that has been created by Levisa, and this project of certification must also take into account the threats by authorities which are not subjected to these regulations. The initiative of these initiatives will not be enough, but it's not up to them to negotiate with third countries. So the answer that we can provide is mainly a political answer from the states, from the countries, from the governments, and economic actors and governments must therefore lead the way. And the Rome Consensus is pivotal to this extent. I would like to remind you that this project is not simply a European project, but is also considered by other countries such as Japan or the G7, or has also been brought forward to the UN. There is a growing interest, and this goes beyond the European Union approach. There will be new texts, new European texts, the Data Governance Data Act, and also the law concerning artificial intelligence. These European texts must be in line and coherent so that the new provisions will not have any impact or overlap with the GDPR. We must be able to control, let's say, this legal framework controlled by authorities that can act on the basis of their knowledge and their practical knowledge. The CNIL can act in line with this regulation, especially given the years of experience within the digital world. And there are some targets and goals, for example, the protection of the health system and also the fight against money laundering, etc. Just to give you a few examples concerning the 120 points that we write every year. Also for the 40,000 cases that we go through every year, we analyze every year. To conclude, I'm very happy about the initiative, today's initiative, which is one of the last event and which can open up to a dialogue that provide the European actors a better control over the current situation. Thank you, Madame Denis, for speaking about these elements that are part of the current debate concerning digital sovereignty. I'd like to now invite here Ingrid Solner and Peter Kramer. Can you hear me? Well, actually, there is also Oliver Bartnou, who should be connected remotely. Well, thank you. Thank you to you three for your participation. We will start with a short introduction. I would like to ask you to be very brief. I will just ask you a question. Well, when you look at what has happened in the last years, what do you think? I mean, do we have a lot to do? Or Ingrid Solner from Tetris, a cybersecurity company founded in 2010, Tetris platform, which helps the neutralization of the cyber attacks. Well, I think we have improved a lot. I mean, we have made many steps forward. We still have a lot to do. We need to work on the turnover, especially when it comes to public tenders and private purchase. Oliver Vartu from Cybernetica Estonia, CEO. You have played an important role as for the X-Route project concerning the digital transformation and also the digital transformation of Estonian. Do you agree? A lot has been done, but we still have a lot to do. What do you think?
I think that we are really moving in the right direction. Having been in the industry now for about 15 years, I can see that Europe is gradually moving itself towards capability creation, central capability creation, but the question is whether we're moving fast enough, because we obviously understand, everybody in the panel and all the previous also keynote speakers have also highlighted that the world is very, very competitive. If we look at what China, United States, and other regions are doing, they are moving very, very fast, creating their central platforms and really innovating on these huge, large platforms, and also creating an innovative ecosystem that supports the creation of these platforms. And I think here Europe can move faster and definitely should move faster.
Peter Kramer, donc vous êtes à la tête du hub allemand de Gaia X. Donc Gaia X, je vous le rappelle, je pense que tout le monde est familier.
This is a French-German initiative. This platform can be used to set, agreement concerning data exchange. Do you agree with that?
In English, I think I'm the only one here who doesn't speak French or Italian, so sorry for that. I think this is better. All right. Yes. What does GaiaX? What's the role of GaiaX in this whole question there? Now, when we talk about data economy, when we talk about the completion of the European digital market, when we talk about digital sovereignty, we usually refer to the question of agency. Are you able to make self-determined and well-informed decisions regarding your digital identity? And that is, first of all, a question of regulation, which is why the Data Governance Act, the Data Act, Digital Markets Act, Digital Services Act, and so on, everything that will come after that, why that plays such an important role. But it's also a question of technology, and technology heavily relies on a common level playing field. Does everybody who's active in Europe, in the ecosystem that we as citizens deem appropriate for the way we want to structure our interaction, does everybody who's active in these, do they follow certain rules? And this is something that regulation, of course, can regulate, but it's also something where we need common understanding. And this is where GaiaX comes into play as the great equalizer when it comes to technology. We need to make sure that services are interoperable, that services can work with each other, that when you buy a certain service offering or a data service, that it meets certain criteria that you yourself as an individual or as a company rely upon to make your endeavor profitable or efficient. And this is why we need GaiaX so urgently, and which is why it has been met with so much enthusiasm and effort in creating it, and it will be even more important in the future, because what we see is there's a lot to be done. To sum this up.
Si on peut rester, on peut peut-être rester sur Gaia.
Well, in this public debate, we talk often about these solutions, American solutions or Chinese solutions, and the interaction of these solutions with the European ecosystem. Do we need or can we cooperate with these two countries, with these two bodies? Because Gaia X has created an enthusiastic approach. Do you think we can talk about this? Well,
Chinese giant on the one hand and the European ecosystem on the other hand. But can we have both? Do we need to have both in order like, to achieve this like overarching digital sovereignty? Because you just said that's something that's worth mentioning. You just said like it led to a lot of enthusiasm, Gaia-X, but it also created some tensions, right? Yes, absolutely. And frankly, we need to face the realities here. 70% of the cloud market in Europe are being provided by non-European companies. And this market share will not be, we will not be able to brush under the rug and act like it doesn't exist. So we need to make sure that at least in the short and middle run, we come up with a hybrid business model where you have certain sets of data which are, for some reason or another, non-critical, and you can push them into a very cost-efficient ecosystem. And there's a certain set of data, a sanctum of data, which needs certain amounts of protection and privacy and a certain quality of service and a certain seal of approval of some sort of authority that does this. And this is where Gaia-X really comes into play. So we need to make sure that we will be able to work in these hybrid business models where you have American and Chinese actors on the market, but also a prominent and ever-growing share of participants from Europe, because, well, Europe will only be able to keep up with the rest of the world, or even leapfrog them, if we are able to create innovative data ecosystems. And this is something where we are sorely lacking at the moment.
Oliver, j'aimerais me retourner à présent vers vous. Je ne sais pas si vous avez pu entendre tout à l'heure.
Olivier, I would like to ask you something. I don't know if you've been listening to the former president of Estonia. I would like to talk a little bit more about cybernetics and about the role that the Estonian state has played in the development of your enterprise.
Thank you, with pleasure. I think the main takeaway when you analyze the Estonian ecosystem and how it has been created is that there has been a very, very strong push from the government to actually work together with the private industry to create this kind of digital society that we have achieved here in Estonia. So the government has been a very, very strong partner to the private sector and the private sector to the government. The government has not by itself really created any fundamental building blocks of the digital society, but it has always leaned on the private sector for creating these kind of fundamental technologies. And what is also really important to mention when studying the Estonian ecosystem is that almost from the very, very beginning, the researchers and the scientific community in Estonia has been involved in the creation of the digital society. So when we do our when we build our fundamental building blocks in the digital society, we always involve researchers to kind of look really beyond the horizon to see what is out there and what might be coming, and then use this knowledge to create the building blocks or to create the solutions here in Estonia. It could be seen in the creation of the X-Road technology, which is the kind of underlying government operating system that runs the Estonian e-government or e-society, which basically enables to securely exchange data between different government but also private organizations. On top of this X-Road, we have built 2,000 individual digital services that service both citizens, government to government, but also government to business interactions. But the similar use cases or similar kind of, let's say, modules or ways of building technologies can also be found when looking at the creation of our digital identity infrastructure here in Estonia, which started by deploying PKI infrastructure by utilizing identity cards, then taking this to mobile ID, and furthermore then into smart ID. Again, a great use case would be looking at internet voting. In Estonia, about 40% of the population vote online. We don't go to booth. Behind internet voting, there has been a very, very long-term and very consecutive research into how to build internet voting protocols, on what kind of cryptography should be used, etc., etc. And finally, I want to also make a notice that this ecosystem that we have built here in Estonia and that we have achieved has actually also is interest to the United States. So, for example, Cybernetica has been working with DARPA, which is maybe one of the most prestigious research funding bodies in the world, to look again on these kind of over the horizon projects, what might be coming in 5 to 10 years, and that how this can be then deployed in the society. Thank you.
Merci à vous pour votre réponse élaborée. Et Ingrid, j'allais vous demander, c'est important ces partenariats?
It's very important that the public administration is an example also in terms of technological choices. Do you think that the tide has turned? Well, it is indeed very important that states commit themselves together with the businesses and corporations in states to finance throughout research and innovation the technological revolution, which also brings about employment. And of course, we must build partnerships between the private and the public sector. And the next step is, of course, you need to fund research and innovation, but the next step is to do something concrete, to say, I'm proud to have contributed to the development of these innovations, and now I'll buy them, because a company is based on its turnover and growth. And of course, the two things are linked. So we've seen a very favorable growth. So we've seen a simplification, which we're starting to see also in terms of public procurement and in general cooperation between the state and companies, the corporate world. It's not always easy, because for a company, it's not always easy to devote an entire team of people to doing two things, basically, the public tenders, because these processes are extremely long and complex. And the second aspect, which is very important in the framework of cooperation between the state and companies, it's not easy for a private company to send people to Brussels to lobby and impact on the solutions adopted. And we know, however, that our non-European competitors do that, so we must do it as well. I am the person responsible for marketing. When they ask me whether we should go to a certain event, whether we should be present, and I always say yes, because our competitors are there. As they say in the United States, we need fake it till you make it. So being there, being visible, and means that the American competitors will start to, in a way, look up to us, and because they want to be sure that they are cooperating and dealing with very, very solid brands. So again, Fake it till you make it. Now, if I can, I would like to talk about cybersecurity. Is there a before and after the Russian-Ukrainian war? COVID was certainly very impactful, but was there an acceleration also after the war? Of course, the social and political context does have an impact because cybersecurity is strongly linked to sabotaging and intelligence services. So the geopolitical context strongly impacts on the threats and in general on the situation for corporations in general. When we're all working from home using our personal computer, the threats are multiplied because the so-called attack surface is broader. So we need to adjust the IT systems of companies to this situation because this is the role of cybersecurity, to keep companies safe, to keep employment safe. That was necessary. The pandemic has played a huge role, but also the Russian-Ukrainian conflict in the current geopolitical context has strengthened the level of vigilance and monitoring, because we do not only need to manage the physical flows of data, and we know how difficult it is sometimes, but also other economic flows, and our companies are facing challenges, but they also have opportunities to make the most of. And this is also true at the extra-European level. It is necessary to take a further step because European companies have something more, as other panelists have said, because we have trust, we have ethics, and these are two factors which really play an important role, especially as for cloud is concerned. One of the main factors in OVH cloud is trust. Trust from the ethical point of view, for example. This is what I can say about this topic. And the last question is for you, if you promise to be short, is on the importance of Gaia-X and this initiative of private companies. Why is it important that the private sector takes the initiative and leads the game in a way concerning digital sovereignty?
Well, it will be hard to keep short on this, but why is it important that the private sector goes forth? Because this is where innovation happens. Let's face it. No matter the amount of money you pump into a sector, it all depends on whether you can make money off of it. If it's a profitable business model, you will be able to launch new technologies, new initiatives, and well, new companies in the end. But we should never underestimate the importance of the public sector in this. The public sector, in Europe at least, is a trust anchor. People trust institutions because we elect them. We believe that they are trustworthy. So if we manage to get the public sector to purchase innovative solutions provided by European companies, there's a very large chance that this is a precedent for private consumption. Because, well, if it's good enough for my public administration in Munich, Germany, it's probably good enough for the small or medium enterprise, which is not far away from there. So this is really where we need to bring public-private partnerships to life, because they're important to bring trust into an ecosystem that is lacking trust at the moment.
Et ce sera le mot de la fin. Merci beaucoup à tous les trois. Merci. Merci.
Thank you so much. And I would like to give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you. So in the light of this debate, we're seeing that something is happening in Europe. I would like to talk about the Rome Consensus, and I will do it with other guests. And this is the result of our exchanges and today's initiative. I would like to call Mr. Michel Poulain on this.
I'm CEO of OVH Cloud. I'm very happy to be here in this extraordinary place. I would like to thank the ambassador, French ambassador, for welcoming us, and also all the people who came here today. I would like to thank everybody who took part in this event, and also those who took part during this year events, contributing to what we call the Rome Consensus. I will explain a little bit more about it in a few moments. Well, everything started in Rome a year ago, and digital sovereignty was already an important topic. But we hadn't realized how important it was to actually establish an agreement between public and private sector in order to understand which are the common, the share points, the share views to establish then an action plan. This debate has become pivotal. This public debate has become at the core, has become pivotal. There are several acts, the DMA, the DSA, which we mentioned already, but every country has an approach which is different. Sometimes they clashes. So despite these differences, though, we need to create a common sense. And sometimes, we must think that it's possible to find common ground, especially considering the basis of European values, which I hope we all share. All the Europeans that we have met, whether it was government representatives or enterprises, they all agree about the fact that Europe can now work in building an ecosystem which is ethical and competitive at the same time. It's okay to agree, but act is actually better. And I think that this is the ambition of this project. What is the Rome Consensus? Is it a consensus which is shared by everybody? Europe is a little bit delayed. We have seen that Europe was not able to protect data. Europe has not been able to, play according to some rules. I think that the rules, European rules, are actually very ethical, especially when it comes to cloud. This consensus is also shared because digital has an impact on our lives. Digital has been at the core of some companies. Like we need to talk about the data concerning the health services and also the financial sector. We've seen with Facebook and American hospitals the problem that there have been with the data. We have looked at the crisis with the pandemic and the Ukraine-Russia war. All of this is part of a big challenge that the U.S. is about. Not only U.S., we're all dealing with. U.S. is about to implement a law concerning the data, the use of data. And we European actors, we are in the same position. We need to think about this digital sovereignty. We should have a common approach about what we need to do, which is why I think there is a need for concrete action. First of all, the protection of data with no compromises. Clearly, we need to respect these data, to protect these data. I was very happy to hear what the president of the CNIL said concerning the data protection. I think that we also need principles such as interoperability, open source. I have been very happy to what I have heard from Gaia X MD, and I hope that at the end of this project, the Gaia X project, we will reach that result. It's important not only to manage these data, but also the technology. I think this is fundamental. Europe must be able to manage whichever technology, whether it's at industrial level or server, clouds, apps, algorithms, everything. This can create a continuum, and it could be at the basis of our strategy. Also, what has happened in Ukraine, it shows how important it is for our employment, for our children, for the agriculture, for the health services, energy. These are all very important topics. Consensus is needed in order to understand how we can act. We from OVH Cloud have drafted this report, this document, and we want to help Europe in managing and dealing with its destiny. I think we have everything we need. We have talents, we have enterprises, and I hope that there is also political will, which is common, shared. And I must say and acknowledge it, we need time, but I strongly believe that we need to work on the 4 pillars. The first one, the regulation and the regulatory framework. We need these rights to be protected and respected. I'm very happy to see that the legal tools that are used by those who are exporting data have can be found in France, in Belgium, in the Netherlands, and I hope soon in other countries. Even Italy recently has spoken about, against the use of these tools. We have, we must continue working in research and development. We have excellent engineers, and we need to encourage them. As for the funds, funds are very important. When I say funds, I mean we should think about mechanisms which shouldn't be too complex. OVH hasn't received any fund, but we should consider about public funds and that are used in other continents. Why Europe has 80% of these funds that are then used in by non-Europeans, especially when it comes to the IT. There are also some startups that we need to help. The former president of Estonia said it. We are an example in OVH Cloud. Last but not least, the human aspect. We need to invest in education. We need to think about the future generations of engineers. We need to make sure that they have their will. They want to remain here to develop new technology, new European technology. We are investing and we're trying to employ actors that can be part of this big family. I think that if we are united, we can create technologies which are ethical and which can protect our sovereignty. Sovereignty is a way to protect all the actors involved. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Paulin, pour cette présentation. On aura l'occasion d'en...
Thank you, Mr. Poulin, for this introduction. We will talk about the Rome Consensus in a while, but before we start, the digital tools, we have Maud Vinet, Quantum Hardware Program Director for Renewable and Alternative Energies. She wanted to talk about the promises of quantum for the continent. Thank you for this introduction. My name is Maud Vinet. I am a researcher for computing and calculation. I create chips to build, to assemble a quantum computer. I have heard about this Rome Consensus, which I think is very interesting. It's very interesting to think about the consequences about the quantum computing. Think about using a traditional computer. You are looking your way out of a maze, and maybe you have to explore all the different roads. Maybe it might take you some time before you identify the right ones. Whereas with quantum computers, through coding, you can receive the information that maybe you have to go left, and thanks to the intersection of this data, you will know exactly what is going to happen. Thanks to the right algorithm, you can you might be able to find the right exit. This just to tell you that a quantum computer is a computer that is able to solve problems that cannot usually be solved by a traditional computer, also using less energy. This is a real revolution. as for coding and programming is concerned, there are different apps in different sectors. There is high potential in, worth thousands of dollars, which can be implemented and used in many different sectors. This is a completely new paradigm. This is something that breaks completely from the past. There are new actors that should, and I hope so, be able to deal with this topic. In Europe and in France, computer can be reprogrammed within the IT sector, thanks to the IT researchers of different entities and bodies from Netherlands, Spain, Sweden. There are platforms, technological platforms like I'm IT Belgium, and I think, they have quite an ecosystem of industrial actors, global fundraising. In Germany, Blue Force Radial, as for computing of high performance, UVH. So a whole set of enterprises which really can help in building this value chain. So just to benefit from this, I think that we should keep on working with academic research. But in order for this to, bring about positive consequences, we need to work on two different points: tools and skills, competences. We need to use and have funds to support research, and at the same time supporting also industrialization through this fund. And when it comes to skills, if there are no women or men which are not fond of these new realities, we can't go forward. We need engineers that have a multidisciplinary background and which can continue working on quantum computing. We need to be willing to bring together all these different topics and also skills to work together towards the future. This is what I wanted to tell you about the quantum computing. Thank you. Thank you, Maud. You have made very clear which are the, which is the stake and the challenges connected to the quantum computing. One last presentation from Laurent Giovacchini, who is connected remotely. Giovacchini is the deputy CEO of Soprasteria, which is helping and supporting enterprises in their digital transformation, but is also responsible for the sovereignty issues, digital sovereignty issues concerning the French organization that you are here representing.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to have been invited to this event organized by the French presidency of the Council and on the initiative of OVH Cloud. I would like to provide a new context to what is at stake, in terms of digital sovereignty, and especially about the economic sovereignty and the future strategies of the European Union. As you know very well, the matters of economic sovereignty and the strategies have always been regarded as a French obsession. Our partners have always looked at us in a very suspicious way when we talked about these issues. But two events have put these topics on the top of the European agenda. First of all, the election of Donald Trump, which has proved that our American friends had shifted their interest towards Asia and China and they were not only interested in Europe. So maybe Europe should have been a little bit more independent in terms of economic capacity, also to be able to protect ourselves. The second event was the healthcare crisis, which emphasized our dependencies at the healthcare level, but also at the food level, energy level, and so on and so forth. And then another event, the Russian-Ukrainian war, which has emphasized the vulnerabilities of Europe in the agricultural sector, in the energy sector, and also in the digital sector, which is the topic of today's event. Here, would have never expected a war in Ukraine, and we would have never expected COVID to occur. We were not waiting for anything in order to start tackling these issues. We had been talking about it since the start of 2018. There was a three-party consensus meeting in Rome, and we had already reached a consensus. And we agreed on the fact that the expression economic sovereignty was not a bad word, and this was right before COVID. And we said that we needed to be more independent in Europe, including at the digital level. It was, in a way, one of the ancestors of the Rome consensus, as Mathieu Poulain told us. So why did this topic go back to the top of the European agenda? Well, first of all, because Trump's election, the health crisis, and the Russian-Ukrainian war have emphasized the need for European companies to be able to control and manage our own destiny in order to ensure that in France, Germany, Europe, there are not only branches of extra-European multinationals and hairdressers. We need to manage our knowledge well. We need to take responsibility for it, and we need to make sure that, in a way, the rest of the world is also dependent on the European Union. This is the agenda for digital sovereignty in the European Union. We think that Europe cannot allow itself to be naive because there are these big blocs, the United States and China, in a context of increasing geopolitical tension involving, for example, Russia. And we think that neoliberalism and the market economy do not necessarily have to be synonyms of naivete, and mine is not blind protectionism, because this would be to the detriment of our economies, which would not be able to interact with other markets. But we need to create a fair competition at the global level, what we call a level playing field. The companies must work together with public institutions to regulate and create forms of partnerships which are able to redesign this path halfway between attractiveness and the sovereignty. Here, we need a strategic European Commission, and the recent initiatives which have been taken in other sectors, not the digital sector, but initiatives like ERA, GPU, the European Agency for the Raw Material, and a set of instruments for public sale at the international level, which introduces a mutual approach. And the European Union might decide not to include countries who do not open their own markets to international trade. And these are all steps forward which would have not taken place in a different context. They could only take place in today's context. So we think that these topics are particularly important today because we are facing increasing threats in the IT framework. For example, there's an increasing number of cyber attacks. Some acts, such as the Cloud Act and the presence of extra-European companies and their increasing importance in Europe. There's also an attack on reputation. There's a set of threats and risks that have to be tackled by European companies. And I think they've understood very well that we must take on this strategic independence approach. I do not want to add anything to what has been said in this regard, but I must say that I agree, because the European tech sector has something to say to the word. This is not a technology which is only for profit or for controlling society. It is a technology which protects the citizens' privacy, which is centered on the European founding values. And I think that our digital sovereignty should be based on these levels. There are several levels here: the cyber security, the cyber protection level. And in Europe, even if we are progressing in a very fragmented way, in general, there is quite a good cyber resilience. And secondly, our second ambition regards the object of today's meeting, the infrastructure and the data infrastructure and the management of data. There's still much to be done from the point of view of legislation, as we've seen with DSA and DMA and other regulations being designed, and at the corporate level, as we've seen with OVH Cloud. I'm really happy that we've been mentioning quantum computers. There is an opportunity to create a future European champions which could become the protagonists of quantum computers, metaverse, artificial intelligence. These are all fields where there is no absolute priority of Chinese and American stakeholders. We can be the protagonists here, but we have to take an offensive approach, not a defensive one. Maud said about quantum computing that there are certain fields where we could take the initiative at the global level. This is what I wanted to say. I could have talked about the Sovrasteria and OVH Cloud initiatives, Gaia X or Cloud Alliance, piloted by DG Connect, or I could have talked about the joint tenders that we take part in as for the digital platform or industrialization platform are concerned. The initiative Trust.ie, which is a French initiative, but this would take too long. Probably I've been speaking for too long now, so this is the end of my contribution, but I would also like to add that when we're talking about digital sovereignty, well, this is a very important thing at stake, but it is also an aspect of strategic independence in terms of defense and economic independence, which are very important today, also in terms of reindustrialization. This is what I wanted to say this morning, because I wanted to take a step back And of course, you've been tackling very important events. And thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Giovacchini. And I must say that sovereignty is not a bad word anymore. And we're seeing it today with the Rome Consensus. This is something that I suggest we delve into right now. I'm asking Michel Poulain and Frank Ongaro to come here. Michel Poulain, no need to introduce you. You are the General Director of OVH Cloud, and Franco Ongaro, the person responsible for technology and innovation at Leonardo, a company specialized in the aerospace, defense and security sector. Your team deals with data, artificial intelligence, cloud. Is this a good summary? Well, I would like to start with Michel Poulain, as in the other session. I'm asking you to be short. In which moment was a turning point for you? Why was the Rome Consensus important? Why is it important to act? Well, because we've been lagging behind. There is a consensus on the diagnostic phase, but we need a consensus also on the practical, active sector and the active action aspect, because if today the European stakeholders, including OVH Cloud, are not able to be united, we will lose this opportunity. We must act, and we must act now. Franco, you know very well the technologies and the aerospace sector. That's why you speak French so well, not because aerospace is French, but because you've been working at the European Space Agency for a long time. Investing in innovative technologies can be the driver for digital innovation, right? Well, I would like to thank the embassy and all of you for this invitation, and I would like to extend the greetings of our CEO, who could not be here today, but focuses a lot on this topic. I do agree with the 4 points that Michel has mentioned, and I believe that you cannot really have a legal sovereignty without a technological sovereignty. Let's take an example from the airspace world. If the ESA can speak to FAA on the same level, this is due to the fact that we are among the major exporters of the world. This means that we can talk on an equal level, and there are things that we've been doing very well from the point of view of legislation, but we need to do more on the technological aspect, on the quantum aspect, for example. I'm not sure that we're really lagging behind in terms of artificial intelligence, but of course we must work a lot about it. And there's also some margin here as far as quantum is concerned. Michel, we were saying that the Rome Consensus is based on 4 pillars, but there are also short, mid, and long-term priorities. What do you think the priority is? Well, I think that the first thing is we need to abide by the law. The CNIL chairwoman has shown that today, unfortunately, in the GDPR framework, there is not always compliance to the law. And then we need to approve, to complete the approval process of laws. DMA and DSA are sometimes under attack. There are other priorities also. For example, public tenders, 80% of funds allocated by public tenders ends up in the pockets of non-European stakeholders. There's a chain of technology which needs to be taken care of. I'm not asking for a monopoly of public sale. I'm not asking for protectionism, but I think that there is an imbalance between the reality of the European ecosystem and public policies in terms of public procurement. We could have 50-60% balance, but we've got an 80%, 20% balance here. So we must give an example as participants of the public sector and private companies. We must support companies. There are dynamic companies which trust us, so we must fund them. For example, in the airspace and aviation sector, we must support these dynamic companies in order not to be prey of those who do not comply with the law. Now, there is a Buy European Act. Do you think this is a step into the right direction? And this Buy European Act, is it a good idea? Well, I'm not responsible of European policies, but what I fear is how fast we can go. Without regulations, we can do some things, and I think we should do them. We can implement some solutions. The CNIL has shown that today we've got some instruments available. And this shows us that a major stakeholder does not cease to be major if they comply with the law. Of course, we need to understand that it is important to act now when we've got everything we need to do it. We can act on the short term. For example, certification. A certification scheme must ensure compliance to the law, and certifications must ensure that stakeholders have an extraterritorial immunity. We cannot spend billions in lobbying in order to have the law to be complied with. So it is important that cybersecurity and data safety regulations allow us to be compliant with the law. So all of the initiatives are important, but now we need to act. We need to help startups, and we need to be dynamic. We need to ask this very strongly. Are you in line with this? Well, in Leonardo, we do agree with this, but we also act on this. We're active participants of this transformation. Today, the Minister of the Environmental Transition, my predecessor, and he is my predecessor, and he's implemented a cloud system for our department based on open source stacking. We had to fight not to be satisfied with a simple solution we could find on the market. We need to work more, and we need to show that we're able to design increasingly improved solutions now beyond the technology. And beyond all of this, we need to invest much in training. For example, the Leonardo Labs today host 130 researchers, and next year we're going to have 200. We've got relationships with 90 universities, and we also fund PhDs programs. And we do all this in addition to other very important things. I've always been a strong promoter of digitalization. Digitalization has its dark side, let's say, and this is cybersecurity. And we created a cyber academy because we needed to train experts in cybersecurity, cyber resilience, and We have 50,000 employees, but we also have a supply chain of 50,000 people. If I have interpreted well what Michelle said, the general public needs to be informed and trained on these topics. Complying with the law, implementing the law means that we can accept everything or reject them and establish new parameters. But this is very difficult. This is part of training. Training is vital. It is as vital as our data. This allows us to convince our colleagues not to accept the easiest solution, but to try and protect our data without being content with solutions we didn't develop. Well, how can we ensure that the European companies make use of the potential generated by Europe? What about the creation of a single European market of data? Well, we must make sure that our goal is achieved. But the first thing is not to be content with the simplest solution and give our data to somebody that we don't really trust, because we don't know how they'll use our data, metadata, and related data. And the use of this data is to be clarified. What do you do with my data? And this is part of the legislation's task, but it's also about recognizing what data are about. Michelle, you said that we have everything we need for the Rome consensus, and you've been mentioning talents before in the video. It has been mentioned that on the long term, these talents will become a challenge. There will be a lack of talents. I remember that Guillaume Dupin said that this will translate into a limitation on the midterm for Europe. As far as cybersecurity is concerned, how can we remedy to this problem?
Well, we have inserted this within the Rome consensus. All public stakeholders and private stakeholders, they do know we have talents, but not enough. This is just to say, what shall we do now? I think it's important that all countries, all states must invest in technologies, in universities, in PhDs. You do that already. We are trying to work in that direction. We need to have enough men and women. We should also, attract women within this sector, so that at the end we are able to bring together a group of experts. I don't think that we have invested enough in universities, especially in France or in Europe, generally speaking, to attract these talents. Artificial intelligence. We have very good labs in Europe. As for quantum studies, we have startups in Europe. We are working a lot. We work together with Sedusa, etc. We have very good engineers, and we have. We don't have. We have talents, enough talents, if we compare them to other countries, such as the US. We need to do what we can, and we need to invest even more. I am happy to hear that Franco is actually, supporting what I'm saying. We need to think about a European policy, and we need to invest in technological studies, generally speaking. I think that this is also a growing trend, which is why I think that this is the moment to act. Last question, French President Macron until 2030 has set a goal, which is quite ambitious. Do you think it's achievable? I don't want to make any comment concerning political issues. What we are witnessing today is that tech sector at European level is undergoing a critical situation. Estonia has proved to be very dynamic. Italy, Germany, there are many countries which are considered maybe less populated, but they have many startups. This means that there is potential, that there are talents. I think one of the challenges now is finding funds and to create a sort of, scaling in order to help them. And we also need to be alert. We need to, these enterprises must create technology. They must develop technologies on their own. If we're talking about enterprises who use or companies who use instruments and technologies which are not European or not developed by Europeans, we then need to realize that the part of this IP, of intellectual property, is conceived outside Europe. And I think that in the future, they might also fund the main economic operators. We need to understand that to reach this goal, we need to provide financial funds, we need to help, we need to understand what is technology, what is innovation. This is just one of the pillars. This must remain in Europe. I think this is very, very important. We need to be very careful and not just thinking about creating market platforms, which I think might be not enough in the long term. I would like to thank you, everybody, for taking part in this event. Before concluding, I would like to invite Gianpaolo Mansella. I hope I have pronounced well your name, to talk about Scale Up Europe. Well, good morning. I think that this is the time after Michel Paulin mentioned the opportunity about improving funds. 4 points. The first one is that we need to look at the investments. There is a fund created in 1994 to help SMEs, and in 2017 with the employment initiative in helping in venture capitals, and then in 2014 after the European fund crisis, the presence has actually increased. What is the industrial politics today in Europe? I think, generally speaking, we need to think about two targets, two goals: the double transition, and on the other hand, a strategical autonomy. We need to think about industrial plan, a movement bottom up, and other projects that instead are top-bottom. So within this framework, we can involve the industrial European policies that need public funds and also to mobilize private funds around and for these, to achieve these goals. Third point, what are we doing? What are we currently doing? There is an initiative called European Big Tech Champion that does two main things. The first one is to set up a pan-European fund, scalable, which means we are a little bit behind this for investment funds specialized in the scale up of our startups. This means that many startups make this IPO outside Italy. As the former president of Estonia said, they start to be part of other realities. This is a French initiative that will be active starting from December. The second initiative has been promoted by the European Union within the initiative of Capital Market Union and within the industrial funds, which means to invest on these public tenders procedure. So We, as I said, are a little bit behind schedule as for European funds are concerned, and we are therefore committing in helping through this pan-European panel to help. If I understood well, Mr. Polan, this is an initiative, a lobbying initiative, and by that I mean lobbying to create, to put pressure on decision-making at European level. You have mentioned 4 points. I know that there are many different things for the European pillars, which is basically an important step of this project. What I would like to say that I would like to invite you to be in contact with the other partners and actors and stakeholders. Therefore, you can help us to this extent. As for the last thing you said, the fragmentation of the financial commitments, considering the urgent matters, because the financial logic should go hands in hand with the industrial plan. So I would like, therefore, to draw to a conclusion. I see that an invitation has been launched. I would like to thank the embassy for welcoming us in this wonderful place, and also would like to thank the people who took part to today's event. I would like to thank people here today, or everyone who has been invited, or those who participated remotely. The Rome Consensus is basically an engagement in reacting collectively. I think that maybe in 1 year or maybe 5, we could meet once again here and see which steps have been taken as for digital sovereignty is concerned. Thank you.